Okay, so here we are in Maya. This is the character that I will be using, the Spider-Verse version of Spider-Man. I got this on the Agora assets page that you can find here, and then I'm using this Spider-Man in particular. All credit to the artists that have made this wonderful rig. Thank you very much. And you can see here at the bottom, it does say game ready, and I've actually confirmed that it is game ready. One of the things that you can look at in particular, and if you can see the skeleton, we look at it here in the outliner under joint organization, you can see these joints are joints that I created, and I'll go over that in a second. But if you can see here, if we unfold this group, we can see that all of the joints are in one skeleton hierarchy that basically are nested underneath a root. A root being some kind of a location, a group, or a joint that is set at world origin. So you can see some other joints here, like I mentioned. I'm adding a few things onto this rig in order to make my life a little bit easier. But I've added a asset for some of the abilities that I'm going to be showcasing in my character intro. So I've got these three web balls. So my favorite version, I should say my favorite game version of Spider-Man is Marvel vs. Capcom 2 Spider-Man. And he shoots these. One of his abilities is he shoots these web balls, and so I think I'll add some of these in. They kind of look like a fireball of sorts, but that's okay. And two other things that I made really, really quickly. Just single joint FK chain webs. So you can just see it's just like one big FK chain with a cylinder. And this is basically going to be my webbing. I'm going to try and frame and animate these assets pretty cleverly. That way, I won't be spending too much time animating these props. I'll be spending most of the time animating Spider-Man, as I think that'll probably be the more useful thing for you guys to see. And so, like, these will probably be more so function than form, right? I just want it to work and look functional. I can't have Spider-Man swinging around without any kind of semblance of a web. So a simple web, I think, will do. And particularly the way that I like to work in Maya, you'll see in future lessons. I don't really necessarily like using a picker or any sort of thing like that. Normally, when I animate, it's just the character. I don't even see the joints like we're doing here. Um, I'll I'll create a lot of selection sets with Anibot, and I'll use like the picker here, or I'll use this as my quote unquote picker. A couple of things I'd like to call out on the rig in particular, or any rig that I like using. Normally, I'll use a cog and a cog gimbal to separate out my transitions rotations. Doesn't look like that this character has a gimbal, but that's okay. We can still use it as is. And another thing that I like to try and make sure of and check is to see if there's advanced twist down the spine. So I'll turn on wireframe unshaded, and then I'll just turn on default material for now. Oh, darn. Here, what I'll do is I'll throw him in a layer, and then I'll turn this layer green. That way it's a little bit easier to see when we use default material. There we go. Okay, cool. So one of the things I always like making sure of is checking if there's advanced twist in the torso. So normally what I like to do is the way I'll use the spine is I'll most likely use maybe spine 1, spine 2 for RX and RZ, and then I'll just use spine 3 for RY. If we're thinking anatomically, um, and this is also why I like doing it now. I like to check deformations before I start. But if we're thinking about things anatomically, right, this is in the middle of the, or well, close to it anyway. Sometimes some spine controllers will be up here in the chest and it'll be right in the middle of the rib cage. And like when you rotate it down, it'll feel like the rib cage is kind of collapsing in on itself. And so one thing I make sure of is when I use the spine controls, I use them as a unit because the spine acts as a unit. And so I treat it like such. So I'll most likely use, I might use, let's check the deformation. So this is spine 1, 2, and 3. What does spine 1 and spine 2 look like? So I'm getting some decent bend there, but if I wanted a really strong C shape, I think I would have to use more than those two. So I might be able to use these 3. I'm afraid that if I use these 4, the chest will begin to feel like it's caving in on itself. Yeah, a little bit. So I'll most likely use these 3 for RX and RY. And then ideally, I'd like to be able to use just one controller for the twist. And so I see there's some controls here. I might look into, so this is what I mean by advanced twist. When I twist the top control or just this one control, you can see that there's an even distribution or a good distribution of twists down the torso, right? If I twist just this on its own, it's isolated to just the chest. Not all rigs are like this. This one particularly is, so I'll most likely be using either one of these controls would be great for controlling the twist. But then my issue would then be is if I put Spider-Man in a pose like this, and then I want to twist the character, or I want to twist the spine using RY, having the control here doesn't feel great. I'd like it to be localized to wherever the spine is. So I may have to just bite the bullet and use all 3 of these or all 3 channels, RX, RY, and RZ. So aside from making sure that the skeleton is all one big hierarchy, you also want to make sure and check the actual meshes. So with this being the main body of Spider-Man, you can see over here in inputs that it's bound to the skeleton with a skin cluster. It's basically making sure that it's actually skinned to the joints and not like parented to the joints or constrained to the joints at all. Not necessarily an issue with characters that are more humanistic or more organic, but could potentially be an issue if your character has, let's say, armor plating that's just constrained to joints, or if your character is a robot and, like, let's say the parts of their arm are just constrained to the joints versus skinned. You need to make sure that there is a skin modifier. That way the mesh will actually follow along with the joints, not only in Maya, but in Engine also. Cool. And then I'll do this kind of like a check on the rig just to make sure that like I'm exercising all the options I have at my disposal. I'm using it the way that's most optimal. I have all the limbs set up in the spaces that I like. And I want to make sure that I have enough points of control. We'll get into this a little bit more later on, but if he's going to be spinning and flipping and jumping, I want to make sure that I have enough points of control at my disposal. So you can imagine I'll want like multiple controls that I can use to control different rotations. It'll make flipping and such a lot easier. But yeah, I won't bore you all in forcing you all to watch me make selection sets and set up the rig so the arms are FK, the legs are IK, etc., etc. We can jump back into Maya once we're about ready to start.